All right, welcome. So here we are on our lecture. It should be Thursday when you're doing this. This is a 2-day video lecture. This will probably be broken into at least 2 videos, similar to how your geological time lessons were divided into. So again, you are going to go into modules to find your assignments. Our notes are again an electronic fill in the blank version. You will click the notes. You will make your own copy, remember, file, make your own copy, make sure to change the share settings so that I can view your completed notes, and then you're going to go in and edit these right here so that you have the information from the notes. These ones are a little bit longer than what we were used to, but they've got quite a bit of awesome information. Also, I'm going to ask you to highlight some of these words here. You're going to do that by selecting and highlighting. You can do yellow as long as it's a light color. It doesn't matter to me. You can do purple if you feel so inclined to. All right, let's get started with our lecture then, shall we? Remember to submit the document when you're done as credit for Thursday and Friday's class. All right, so we are moving into evolution. We've discussed already the history of the Earth, so 4.6 billion years ago to now. We talked about the different eons, which we have had 2 so far. Our current eon is called let's remember the word. It was pretty difficult to pronounce. It was called the Phaerozoic. And before the Phaerozoic eon, we had what we call Precambrian time, which took up about 88% of Earth's history, so quite a few years there. Actually, the majority of Earth's lifespan was spent in the Precambrian period from 4.6 billion years ago to 541 million years ago. And then we moved on to our different eras in the Phaerozoic eons. We changed eons, and our life quickly began to evolve into what we know today. The Paleozoic era was the oldest of those. We called that you can think of it like the age of the invertebrates. We had many single-celled organisms, and life was pretty basic at that time. And then we had a mass extinction. Remember, at the end and start of each of our eons and eras, we have mass extinction events. We had about 90% of all marine life die in the Precambrian mass extinction, and 70% of all land things die. The Paleozoic era, however, ended in mass extinction as well, probably due to Pangea forming together, so our supercontinent going together. Then we had the Mesozoic era, the age of the reptiles, where the dinosaurs were king, and then the comets came, or an asteroid came, scientists think, and destroyed them, leading to another mass extinction. The death of the majority of the reptiles on the Earth led to an advantage for the mammals. So our current era is called the Cenozoic era, and it is the age of the mammals. It has been going on for about 65 million years and continues today. Remember, it's debated whether or not we are in the Holocene or Anthropocene epoch. The difference there, scientists have been debating it because humans are creating a lot of mass extinctions because of the way we're treating the Earth. So some scientists believe that we should enter a new epoch, which is smaller than a period. So it goes eon, era, period, epoch, where in the Cenozoic era, the Quaternary period, and the debatable Holocene or Anthropocene epoch. All right, and that is where we are leading to today. So today we're going to discuss biological evolution. So here's where your notes begin. It's a change over time. Evolution is very slow. So it's the change of species over time. We're going to kind of discover who first thought of this, who popularized the idea, and who found evidence to support this theory. What is evolution? Evolution refers to the process through which species change over time. This change results from genetic material of an organism, and it is passed down from one generation to another. Oftentimes, the key to evolution is mutation. So we've got to have different sets of genes for animals and species to be able to evolve. But this is over time, and again, that time is a very short period, or a very long period of time. Evolution takes a long time to be able to change from one species to another species. We have two key scientists when we talk about the, not advent, but the formation of our evolution theory. They are Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck and Charles Darwin. So I'm pretty sure you've heard the name Darwin before. Not sure if you've heard Lamarck. Let's kind of figure out how these two differed and what they discovered. So Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck was alive from 1744 to 1829. He believed that the fossil record showed that species changed over time. He was quite an interesting man. He was named as a naturalist, which means that he was a naturalist is a type of ecologist. They study the nature and they're observational, very observational based, which means they sit outside and watch and observe species pretty much. He was also a soldier for the French army. He was a biologist and an academic. So around 1800, he proposed that an organism could acquire a new trait during its lifetime and then pass the trait on to its offspring. That's what he called the law of, let me make sure I'm saying this right, the inheritance of acquired characteristics. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to provide enough evidence to support his theory. Remember, we talked about in science, for something to be kind of accepted by the general scientific community, you've got to have lots of evidence to support it, and he just didn't have that evidence. So while he might have been on the right track, he didn't have the statistics or the data to back it up. So nobody really believed what he had to say. He was a very interesting guy. Not only did he study like general organisms, he was really into bugs. So he was first to decide, kind of distinguish between invertebrates, so like our crustaceans, like our crabs, but also our insects. So he was somebody who kind of split them apart even further into what we know today. He also decided that, or he was the first to separate arachnids from insects, so separate our spiders versus our regular insect bugs like ants by, we usually separate them based on appendages, how many legs do they have. He introduced the idea that the environment could change the offspring, so that's really went along with his theory of an acquired inheritance. He was also, fun fact, a royal gardener. So he got a job tending the gardens of whoever was king at the time, I'm not sure. But as far as education goes, he entered the Jesuit, which is a Catholic order. It means Order of Jesus. I brought that up because back in this time period, many people were educated with a Christian standpoint or a religious standpoint. Many of the organizations that provided academics for people also, they were religious based. So in this case, it was Catholic, but there were others as well. His first scientific publication was in 1778 when he was 34. Unfortunately, he died because he gradually became blind and died in Paris in 1829. So he didn't live, that was kind of a long life, but that's him in a nutshell. We don't talk too much about him because, like I said, he didn't have the evidence to support his theory. Here is that theory we were talking about. So this idea that organisms can acquire a characteristic and then pass those on to their offspring. So this is also called the law of Lamarck, I believe. It's this idea that an ancestor had a trait that wasn't so desirable, and then they keep stretching their neck to reach up to higher trees and stretching until they progressively become longer. So this would be passed from generation to generation. And it goes along with what Darwin said, and it's very similar to our law of natural selection, or our theory of natural selection, which Darwin coined. But because he didn't have the evidence to back it up, nobody really believed him. Now enter my man Charles Darwin. He was born in 1809 and died in 1889, and boy did he do a lot in those years. Charles Darwin was born on February in 1809. He died in April. He was an English naturalist. Again, naturalists are people who basically go and watch nature and record their findings about it. He was born in Cheshire. He was famous for his work on the theory of evolution. His book that he published in 1859 was called On the Origin of Species, and it did two things for the scientific community. First, it provided a great deal of evidence that evolution had taken place. Now, compare that to what Lamarck did, and he said he had the observations, but he didn't have the evidence to support this idea of evolution. So Charles Darwin was successful in the scientific community, but Lamarck was not successful. Second, it also proposed a theory as to how evolution works. So not only did he provide evidence to support that evolution was happening, he gave a theory for why it happened, or how. This theory is what we know of today as natural selection. So Darwin studied two different types of animals to further his theories. One of those you should know is the Darwin finches, which we're going to talk about after this, but the lesser known of the species are Darwin's tortoises. So these are them, very cute. So what he noticed, Darwin noticed that tortoises with short necks were living in damp areas with abundant plant life that grew close to the ground. Longer-necked tortoises, however, were living in dry areas with cacti. He considered whether the lengths of their necks made it possible for the tortoises to live in different environments. So what was interesting about this is Darwin, sat back quietly and observed the world around him, which is what good scientists do, and he took notes on what he was seeing, and he compared whether this happened in just specific places, so what made them different, and he also compared what made them similar. So that was his support for this, for the tortoises, and we're going to go in depth a little bit more about each of these and how it actually supports his theory of evolution. So those were his tortoises. Darwin made similar observations by looking at the finches. So these are finches are birds, and he was actually looking at the beak size of birds. So with the tortoises, he was looking at neck length. Here he is observing beak size and shape. So among the different islands in the Galapagos Islands, Darwin noticed that there was a variety of beak shapes and sizes of the finches. Some finches he saw had heavy and short beaks used for pecking trees and seeds. So not only did he notice that the birds that had there were birds that had different beaks, he noticed that some were heavy and short, and they primarily ate seeds and ate insects out of trees. Others, though, had small, thin beaks that could be used for capturing insects. So he noticed that they had small, thin beaks, and their diet consists of insects. So Darwin saw these observations, wrote them down, saw them more than once, and wondered if the birds had evolved from similar species. So did they have a common ancestor? Here are some examples of what he would have seen. You can see the variety of beak shapes that we have here. So you can see like this large tree finch has a very hard and heavy looking beak, while maybe you look more towards this warbler finch, who has a thinner beak. Do they have anything to do with the food that they eat? You can see like the woodpecker finch here has a very hard, thick beak as well. Test your knowledge for a second. These are on your notes. Kind of predict for me which bird might eat which thing. So what bird is designed to eat what? I'll give you your answers in another lecture so that you know you're on the right track. And that is the end for this lecture. We will pick back up tomorrow or the next time with these notes right here. Have a great day, guys. This is a 2-day assignment, remember? Goodbye.